Time machines. Okay, so this is a bit of a deep cut Easter egg, although fans are probably familiar with this. By typing a time machine in both Scribblenauts and Super Scribblenauts on the DS, you would be taken to a secret level with star rights. Granted, these never really counted towards anything as far as I could tell. In Unlimited, this would just add a sepia filter and a top hat. I could have done that at home for free. In the first Scribblenauts, there were only 3 of these level situations that would appear, but the developers really took this joke as far as they could with Super Scribblenauts, where 5 different levels had a chance of appearing, with 2 appearing at less than 5% odds each, where you'd meet another Maxwell. This level of commitment for a dumb joke that 99.9% of players would never find is an incredibly charming thing to do, and really showed the level of love and care these developers used to squeeze into these games. Creators in the games, and similarly, the developers of 5th Cell would usually put themselves into their games in some sort of way. Now, a few of them would actually appear directly in the final level of Super Scribblenauts, but if you actually look at the list of them that are in the game, by the end of the franchise, there are 187 game developers that had a specific character model that you could spawn. Obviously, this is noteworthy because this is even more of a deep cut than the Time Machine, because what are the odds you were just gonna sit there and type Andrew Warthen? I mean, come on, I do that every single day. You guys don't type Andrew Warthen in Scribblenauts when you wake up in the morning and before you go to sleep? All right, yeah, this is kind of an awkward one to talk about. Let's just talk about it, okay? With the advent of Scribblenauts, and especially in 2007, you could bet your vote for either Obama or McCain that people were sitting in their basement typing all sorts of words. Now, I'm not gonna say or include the racist word in this video that made it into the game for the purposes of keeping things comfortable and family friendly on the channel. So if you really are curious, you could find this story on the old news sites and stuff. It doesn't have a place here. But essentially, there was a word in the DS Scribblenauts that was considered a racist term, which would henceforth spawn an object related to the stereotype. Jeremiah Slaxa, the creator of the franchise, essentially boils this down to a complete accident, citing a separate definition for that word and how the object autofilled, and pointed out the racially diverse casts of characters, which clearly means he's innocent. I'll let you be the judge of what this means. I'm not gonna take any real side here, but it definitely didn't look great for the team. Warner Brothers data mine. So every company has to have a mascot fighting game these days. I think it's a requirement to signing a lease as a video game company. I mean, Nick Dude's made more than Nintendo on the Switch. So Warner Brothers have been working on their own during the past few years, which is supposed to release early 2024, so any day now, we'll keep our eyes on this. This game is called Multiversus. It has been in alpha since 2022. The game does actually have a pretty interesting cast of characters. I mean, they got goddamn Scooby-Doo. Interestingly enough, though, in one of the data mines of the alpha, there was a code found for Maxwell from Scribblenauts, with the reminder here being that Warner Brothers did publish the Scribblenauts games. Only time will tell whether or not this is true, or even if he makes it over, as this could be one of those fake leaks, but Scribblenauts is such an obscure franchise that including him in the leaks is almost just enough to convince me it's real outright. Since this game comes out soon anyways, I guess we'll eventually know soon enough. I mean, this entire section may age like spoiled cheese. Astronauts. So the name Scribblenauts might sound a bit weird when you really sit down and think about it. I mean, that's what I think about when I sit down at night. Don't look at me like I'm weird. Like, scribble obviously makes sense, as you're scribbling words to unleash chaos into the world. But what the hell does not mean? Well, according to something, I can't find the source, the original concept for the story of Scribblenauts was about an astronaut who went to various planets, using his notebook to help them out. I say according to something because Wikipedia doesn't source it, and the nearest source doesn't even mention it. Journalism is sure a dandy thing. And finally, we have the lost Scribblenauts 3D game concept. Now, this wasn't a real project, and from what we know, it was more or less a concept or tech demo that someone probably made in Maya at gunpoint. I'm lying about that last part, but it's possible. Now, what was lame about this one, in my opinion, was that you wouldn't type your objects into a notebook or anything like that. You would just choose from an endless grid. I guess the developers just thought the journal would be too complicated in a 3D game, but I completely disagree. I think it ultimately would have been more fun than this. Obviously, this is extremely crude, but it seemed pretty well done. I am very curious how this project would have turned out. I don't have a lot more to add to this because it's clearly not a finished game, and it's not something I can really sit down and critique, as it's just a concept or tech demo. But it does make me sad to think this franchise had plans beyond what we knew at one point, and the developers were trying really hard at a certain moment in time to make their games for Xbox One, PS4, Wii U, or maybe even the Switch. They wanted Scribblenauts to continue, and they failed. Developers clearly had passion and potential, and it just never came to be. Scribblenauts Wii. Initially, Scribblenauts Unlimited was meant to be a Wii game. This makes sense when you consider this was the case for a lot of Wii U launch titles. Pikmin 3 shifted development from the Wii to Wii U, and games like New Super Mario Bros. U were clearly a Wii game with a fresh coat of paint. There's not a lot of information about this early version of this game, and doing research is basically impossible because searching Wii just triggers Wii U for every article, which triggers me. The idea of Scribblenauts Wii existing essentially can be traced back to information found on the Scribblenauts wiki, but I haven't been able to find a precise source on this, so take this with a grain of salt, and I apologize for not having more information.